how did you feel the time?
Click, 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 ding!
You programmed it? And
Absolutely.
I was wondering because sometimes for a dancer it is pretty hard to feel the time. So it's really like, but tell me if I'm wrong, but it's a process for a dancer to really feel
the duration
Where,
or something.
if I would set my alarm, then it would click at 1 hour. So you were really precise in this. But do you practice that?
Do I practice?
Yeah, like
time?
Time.
Actually, play. I play in different formations, and one of the formations is a trio. And for a while, we were playing in a place that had to be at 12 midnight. There had not to be another sound, and so there was a clock here. We didn't look at the clock. We said, "Okay, midnight." No, midnight. So sometimes you get to feel what an hour is or whatever. And what a drummer does really is basically keeps time. So I mean, if you can't get it after that, you know.
Then that's a problem.
There's problems, yeah, exactly. So,
Can you tell us more a little bit, because I was introducing you that you met 16 years ago and now again, and what did it mean to you to prepare your soul for this concert? Because in general, but it's also questions to you. Adam, do you care for this one? Okay.
no?
With the speaking he has problem, but he understands. I take this out so you can also see us. So, how did you prepare your soul?
My soul,
Yeah.
honestly, I was very stressed out. I was preparing something that sometimes I let my imagination take me a little bit too far. And I was going to use a friend who's an incredible opera singer to record something for me but we didn't have much time. So I said, well, no. So it stressed me out exactly. What am I going to do? And then I thought, well, I wanted to, what I was preparing with him was also a part of this ballet. It was something new that I had not done. But these pieces that we did, in fact, we improvised through some text, on some text that was written for parts of this ballet. And I was telling Adam and Zoe that the ballet is meant to be danced. I think dance is the most direct thing for people. And I think that if there are things that will be read with no music, there will be danced with no music. I'm not a choreographer, I don't know anything about it. So. And there will be music sometimes with text, but it will all be danced. That's what I envision. So I conceived it as a ballet that one day I would finish and produce. And I started working on it in 2002.
Oh, wow.
And I would put it to the side and come back. And after a while, I was telling your friend, I said, well, I haven't finished. He said, well, I said, what I want to do things because it's a piece. He said, well, let's do it. And so we started doing it. And so since then, I've been doing parts of it. And, I would really like to see it dance. It has never been danced. I'd love to see it dance. No, because, music's not finished. So, I contacted someone who I knew, who was a nice person and everything. And, but it didn't go any further.
So you was proposing this as a basic for the improvisation tonight?
The text that I read tonight, and that was read there, was read or performed, was text for this ballet. And the voices that you heard The first one, the text actually, okay, I don't want to hold this thing. You're not talking, say something. I mean, you know, I'm just babbling. I was talking to Adam today, and I was explaining that history, we cannot escape it. And we do all kinds of things to deal with our personal history, our family history, our collective history, our world history, our planet history, our cosmic history, and we do all these things to make us live with it, and we don't really, well, it keeps changing, you know. There are some people who think that the earth is 6,000 years old because their faith tells them that it began 6,000 years ago. But we have carbon dating much later than that, so I don't know, you know. And a part of that history, when I was in school, I learned when we read world history, there was never anything in it about lots of history. But world history was something that happened in 703. That was important, and something that happened in 11 something, and it was the Bible was invented, or you know, printed material, and then 1492, that was Columbus, and then you know there were these dates, and I always hated history because it was just these dates, you know. I just had no. It was just why, and yeah, actually, yeah, I did like history, and when I was in university, I was studying the history of philosophy. It was a course, and it became much more interesting because I began to understand what we were thinking, where we were as a culture, as a nation, as a global community, how different thoughts affected what was happening. You know? So it was like, so that's history, not these dates. Okay, so in this text, I'm babbling. In this text, that was the first person you hear reading is called Jackie Dialli. He's actually an Egyptologist, and he's lived in Paris for many years. He lives no longer in Paris. He moved back to South Africa. He's South African. He lived in Europe for about over 30 years during apartheid. And I asked him when I was doing some recordings of different things if he would translate this for me. Now, South Africa has nothing to do with what we know of the slave trade, but in fact, so many places have something to do with it, and we really don't know very much about it because it's something that embarrasses us all. We're all embarrassed by it, you know. Those who were on the slave trading style and those who were on the descendants of the slaves. No one really wants to talk about it. Say 2 or 3 things, you know, close the book. And but so we don't really know what it had to do. So he translated this name. The language is called Tswana. And so he translated this phrase that says, you can take the past for granted, for it never changes. I hope you understand what that means. You can assume the past. You can just be firmly solid on the past because it never changes. The next phrase says, you can't take the past for granted because it always changes. And the third phrase says, taking the past for granted changes it. So Jackie put this into Tswana, and what you hear is different ways he's saying this, you know, and he's saying it, and his voice is a little bit, it's not a round voice, it's kind of scraggly, you know, I don't know how to say that, edgy, you know, and voila, that's the first thing. But it's all about the fact that what we know of who we are changes because when we understand from where we come, it changes how we see who we are, you know. And only not changes each of us individually, it changes us of how we see our world, the world we live in. So that changes us as well, you know. The second text that you heard was a friend who was an incredible baritone singer, who was a very, very kind of creamy voice, and he's very used to reading texts and singing. And his name is Ken Norris. He lives in Hamburg. We shared an apartment for a year with another friend. And that text is the one that I didn't read that. No, and when you walk in the room, the figure of that text is conscience. That I read a text later, and it says when she walks in the room, the air is filled with layers and layers of it, concentric rings of what has gone before. So conscience is the fact that, well, conscious is consciousness, okay? So as this character, this entity of conscious walks into the different scenes of dancing, and she is with one person or another, they're aware, and then she's not there. They're unaware, but she's always aware. So it's voilà, that's those are two things that. And later I read something about what consciousness is, and she was born in the womb. She was conceived in the womb of eternity. That's the phrase. Voilà. So, did I answer anything you asked me? Too much. I'm wondering about the process, how you share, because you have you have a connection and relationship with this text, and also because of the ballet since 2002. Yeah. But how could you involve the two other musicians? Because I read the text to them, because I know them. I know them. Because you know, it's when you play with someone, when you dance with someone, you know them in a different way. When you share this thing of music with someone, you have a contact with them that it's nonverbal. It's this, I don't know how to say that. I mean, so to say I know them, I can't tell you what his father's name is, but I know that I had with both of them a very profound experience. We played for a couple of concerts here. And two in the Ludwig Museum. And there was a third one, I don't remember. It was somewhere else. Yeah. But, and we rehearsed, and then they came to Paris. And they played in Paris in a big dance atelier, huge dance room. So I have confidence that in explaining to them what the text is, that they will use their incredible creative talents to respond to it. So that's how we prepared it.
Did they change in the past 16 years?
Certainly.
Did you realize something? But I mean that like the years passed by and you didn't meet, and it's a question also to you guys. If you feel something different from ALDRIDGE.
Sure. Slightly.
Gray hair.
Yeah. Yes. But it's like how it is, no?
Yeah.
Time passes and leaves its marks.
Voila. Exactly.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it was 16 years ago, so. But we've always been talking.
And you mean about that, like, you remember the time when you were performing together and you missed the time?
Kind of.
Or?
I had for years a poster of that
Oh, really?
thing
I lost this poster.
in my room.
Oh, excuse me. Someone came at the rehearsal room where we worked. Is in a building in Paris that's called Les Frigos. And frigo it's slang from refrigerator, okay? And this building was the national train company is called the SNCF. And it was called, it's a complicated name, les entrepôts frigorifiques de l'SNCF, the refrigerated warehouses of the SNCF. And so it became known as Ifrigo. And it was built in the beginning of the 20th century. And right after the war, I think, it was closed. It had a very unfortunate past, not the refrigerated, the frigo themselves, but the trains. Some trains were used to transport people during the war. Not a very pretty story. But the frigo closed down, and in 1980, the beginning of the 80s, a jazz musician, or some jazz musicians were looking for a place to practice. So they went in this place. Now a refrigerator doesn't need a window. So the rooms had no windows. So they would go in, they started practicing. And of course the people at the train company quickly said, no, you had to pay rent. And that's how it started being occupied by humans. And so in our room, it's called the New Music Association, on the wall we had posters from this. And there's a poster from this concert. And last year, I think it was last year, there was a woman who was there looking for things for a film where she was doing the producing of a film done by a man who wanted old posters. So she said, "We'll take these posters and we'll take care of them." And so she took the posters and she didn't take care of them. And I don't have this poster anymore. And I'm really very sorry because it had such a history to it, And voila. So they gave us other posters. But, it's in the frigo. That's because they know this place, the frigo. It's a place where it's a kind of iconic building now. A lot of people come in to see what's happening because from the outside, you can't tell that they're actually working artists there. And some of them are very, very well known, and some who are not well known, some who do great stuff, and some people who do nothing. And voila. So.
And if you can, I'm just interested in why you were talking about playing again with ALDRIDGE. If it's possible to.
One reason for me was for sure that we always were into finding nice drummers to play with. So many musicians are if they are not drummers, then they are seeking for a good drummer to have in their band. So the drums are So I have to admit also for me something very important. And so for me, ALDRIDGE was somebody that I like to play with, so it felt very nice. So it kept in my head, I guess with Adam. but as I remember, we've always been talking, mentioning ALDRIDGE, as somehow somebody that is kind of
crazy.
Yeah, made some big impression on us. And I think I can speak in the name of Adam, but I really enjoyed this week when you were here.
Oh, it was really fun.
And so being back in Paris is also fantastic. So so it was a very important memory from my side.
Me too.
Wow! Yeah.
And I still remember the nice chicken that you made with the olives and so it was great stuff that ALDRIDGE cooked, how to say, a New Orleans style, let's say, no? I don't know. Maybe I remember wrong, but somehow
it's true.
This Cajun kind of thing.
Right.
So that also somehow stayed with me.
Great.
Over the years. Then we visited also in ALDRIDGE at your place.
Right. We are very chauvinistic in New Orleans about our food.
I just would like to open the circle. Maybe
Please,
if someone has any questions or notes or echo. Just it's not a must. Just I don't want to push you out from the discussion. No?
You're smiling.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you said that you don't have a music score, but for musicians the score is somehow the text. Am I right?
For this music, absolutely.
And this is the music for the ballet.
This is an interpretation of the text, and this music is absolutely fresh from tonight.
Okay, yeah, I understand.
We listened to the text earlier, and we played a bit with it. But what we did tonight was absolutely, totally improvised. Now there is music that I have written, real notes, and I wanted to suggest this, but it didn't seem right because we didn't have enough time to practice it. You know why? It doesn't make sense. And since I have very much confidence in these two wonderful musicians, it was a pleasure to play with them. And it, you know, voila. I hope that you understood some of the text. Yeah, I hope you understood, you know, what the words were. And, well, words are music as well. I mean, you know, when we speak, it's a...
And for which instruments is the original score?
I'll just say here. It says trumpet, trombone, bassoon, French horn. That's on this one.
Okay, so for the ballet you will write like the whole score for the musicians, and then you will give the music to ballet dancers. And other question is, why did you choose the ballet dancers and not maybe contemporary dancers?
Ballet meaning, okay, right. When I say ballet, I mean it in a very specific sense. I don't mean traditionally what we call ballet dancers. I mean that it's a piece that should be danced. That is a ballet. You know, like the Nutcracker Suite is a ballet. You know, okay, so, right. So that I had, actually, when I was trying to get some money to write this, to produce it, I tried for a few years and then, you know. But, so I had to describe who was going to be playing in this. And as I conceive it, there are 3 different groups of musicians, some of whom can be in one or all 3 groups, you know. I should say 2 or all 3 groups. One group is more, I say classical with reservation, more traditionally based written music. Then there's another group, can be also some of the same players. There's written music and improvised music, and sometimes only improvised. And there's a third group of musicians who play traditional music, because it should start with traditional drumming. And, you know, it's the beginning of the piece, may I go on?
Yeah.
The beginning of the piece, actually, you're in an auditorium, and the lights go out. And there's a recorded thing you hear. A child says, "Let me have some more." And there's a woman who says, "Now wait, you can't, things are not free. And you know, things don't grow on trees," or something to that effect. And so the child says, "But where does it come from anyway?" "Sugar." And then the traditional drummers start playing. And then it opens. That's the opening of the film, of the ballet. So there's an obvious, very clear reference to Africa and to Europe, you know, and to the Americas, because a lot of the music that we listen to today and what's called popular music, a lot of it's influenced by Africa, and we don't know that it's influenced by Africa because it's made this big, you see that tour around the planet, you know. You hear a lot of African musicians, some of the popular music, when they do something that's more modern, it's more influenced by rock than something like what we call funk or rhythm and blues. It's very curious. Or what's modern African drumming, it's a different thing. But for example, when you listen to salsa, you have something called a clave. Clave is, that's one way. The other way is going is, it's the same thing as taken from a different point. But when you hear certain instruments that these instruments and that sound is from the indigenous people of Americas, but no one knows that. It actually came from there. And so a lot of the music has been infused with Africa and with the Americas and with Europe. And I think it would, at least for myself, it's interesting or important to know how mixed we are on this planet. You know, when people talk about people being in space or living creatures, and of course there are, I mean, you know, come on, we're not the only ones, come on. But whenever there's a contact made, they're not going to go and ask to see this one or that one. We're just human. They're just going to see us as human. That's it. And I'm going to know, well, voila, it's Romanians here, and this is, boom, they're there. With things in their heads, or no big eyes, whatever, you know. There they are, you know, and they're dealing with earthlings. That's it. You know, maybe they think that the lizards, they're probably more intelligent, you know. But, you know, I think that there's a way for us to acknowledge all the rich history of our species that is really overwhelming. We have changed the face of our planet. And we somehow can't seem to get along with each other. Is weird, you know, or to deny that we can get along. I don't know what it is, but, you know. And this particular commerce, it was a commerce, 400 years, 380 years of a commerce where we sold people. This is really shit. Now, slavery had gone, excuse me, that's very rude, I shouldn't say that. This is really not a nice thing. And there was, the slavery existed in many, many, many cultures, practically all of them. But this particular slavery was unique on the planet because of the people who were shipped off to be what we call slavery. Now, I know in Hungarian what that would sound like the word, but in Romance languages, it's Slav. It comes from the Slavic. The Slavic people were used also. That's how we get the name slavery. So it's, you know, it's there. It's all over the place, and this is the first time it was so moneyed. They were taken. Slaves were taken as you call it the spoils of war. There was a war, you know, and you have these prisoners, and they bring them back, they make them work, or they make them do this, you know. And in different societies, they had different possibilities. Some of them could become very wealthy, buy themselves back, or I don't know, live out servitude. I don't know. There are a lot of different ways. This was not that. And in this, they began to describe people as a certain kind of thing, because it helped the commerce. So this is a particular thing. That's why I said it's world history. And it's, you know, it's world history. We have all profited from it, and we have all suffered from it. So I think it's something to be looked at. I don't want to get heavy, okay? But, you know, it's, so that is why in this piece there are different kinds of music. You know, some of the music will be very contemporary in terms of written. You know, some of it will have, you know, will swing, you know, some, you know, voila. Some of it will be improvised on the spot. That night, somebody will be playing something, boom, there. Voila. He was, no, they won't say anything. I'm just bad.
It's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if, because now as I'm listening to you and all the stories which is behind the whole, the text, the music, and also behind or inside you, I'm wondering how, in which level did you connect to Aldridge tonight?
On which level?
That's a good question.
The histories that I heard about
Road history.
on the Jim Perry's.
Okay.
He tell us a lot of stories.
Mm-hmm. And you
It
use your
was-
imagination? And
Yes, it was important
Mhm.
for me.
Mhm.
I think we definitely connected musically, let's say, if you can say something like that. And I don't know, it's, yeah, that's it. I personally feel affected to her, I mean,
Yeah.
so I guess we both do, because we wouldn't have forced this to happen tonight.
Absolutely, that is totally true.
It's already, I don't know, for me it's something that is enough. So,
No, I'm just meaning that which part can you choose for yourself to be able to really fill up the...
I mean, what like Aldridge was talking about now, about this transatlantic trade, the triangle and everything.
Yeah.
So I'm just picking
Yes.
out two things. So this is also something that is circulating in my mind constantly, but I think you know that. And I have to say that I also have like this, you know, I'm into like, yeah, so I share the same view that we all come from Africa.
Absolutely.
So,
Right.
you know, whatever we look like, the anthropologists found undeniable.
That humankind,
That we
humanity
all
is African. How about that?
So,
So we're all African. Yeah, you know. You know, I find it, I'm going to cut you off.
yeah.
No, I find it's very interesting because people look at me. Of course, I have African in me. That's absolutely evident. But Africans are so different. Africa is huge. There are people who look like all kinds of things in Africa, you know. And when I first went to Paris, and the very first time, in the late 70s, it was 78, I think. I was often stopped by Africans who would say to me at that time, I guess I don't know why, they'd say, vous êtes de quelle région? It means, what region are you from? Vous êtes de quelle région? And I was just surprised, you know. I said, well, I'm from the United States, you know. And I said, oh. And they'd look at me. And I thought it was a very strange thing, you know, that they would look at me with this like, you know. And I mean, Africans are so varied, but there's something that I look like that is not African. And they saw that. I thought it was my clothes. But I have ancestors who are European. I have ancestors who are Native American as well. So many of us in the United States, we're the mixture of what we are. So that we are really from there. And everything that we are made up of something that came together there, you know. So, yeah. But I think also, I looked at a map of China. There was a tribal map of China. It was the most amazing thing I'd seen. Photos of different people, the different tribes of people in China. It's huge, China. And at the bottom, there were these very, very dark people. I said, wow, I didn't know that. And these people look so different. But when we think Chinese, we think of one thing. you know, and we are all related. I mean, that's how it is. You know, we have to get over it. That's how it is. You know, yeah.
Well, thank you also for this introduction, or like to think things about, and also for the concert. And Aldridge will be with us for some more days,
Yeah.
lucky enough. Us.
For me.
So, and for us. And if you are around and you meet her, and also like Adam and Joel, just grab them and talk, because there are lots of things to talk about.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you so much for being present. And excuse me, but ears are the most important thing for a musician, and you are many ears. Thank you.
Thank you very much.